Hello folks, welcome to Chicano Studies 101. This is going to be our first video that is going to reflect Learning Unit 1, particularly 5 concepts in the foundational concept slides. Again, this is our video highlighting 5 concepts in Learning Unit 1. Let us begin with race. Race is a socially constructed category on the basis of phenotype. Phenotype is just an academic way of describing what people look like on the outside. So the term literally is society creating categories on the basis of what people look like on the outside. So an identifiable marker to separate folks. That is race. Phenotype is argued not to be biologically significant, which means that when we compare the DNA of a person that would fall under one racial group to the DNA of a person that falls under a distinct racial group or a different racial group, their DNA is very, very similar. So even though their phenotype is different, their DNA is still very much the same, which means that it's not biologically significant. The next term is going to be ethnicity. Ethnicity specifically reflects culture, identity, a sense of peoplehood, a sense of belonging, and it doesn't have anything to do with phenotype, although sometimes within certain ethnic groups they tend to be a little bit more homogenous in terms of what they look like on the outside, but that doesn't necessarily have to always be the case. So it's not about what you look like on the outside, but whether you grew up with a particular culture, particular language, and you identify as such. That is ethnicity. Okay. The next term is ascribed statuses, in which race and ethnicity would both fall under. Ascribed statuses are statuses in which a person did nothing in order to be identified into that particular status or to have or that particular status. So for example, race, ethnicity, gender, age, all of those are ascribed statuses. So either you had them at birth or you inherited them later in life, like becoming someone's aunt or someone's uncle, being a sister or a brother, and so on and so forth. So those are some examples of ascribed statuses. Achieved statuses are statuses in which you actually did something to earn that particular status. In the case of becoming a professor, I hope, went to school, received the necessary credentials in order to teach, applied to teach, trained to teach, and then eventually became a professor. So in the case of a professor, it's very much achieved. If those of you who drive, you learned how to drive, you achieved becoming a driver. You have also possibly achieved becoming a student, although a student can also be an ascribed status. So there are some statuses that can be both, depending on the context, like a student. If you don't have a choice in the matter, you just get sent to school, ascribed status. When you desire to go to school and you're doing it on your own because you want to achieve something, achieved status. In the context of marital status, if you are part of an arranged marriage, you didn't have a choice in becoming married, or your partner was selected for you. At that point in time, I would argue that that marital status would be ascribed. If you decided to get married and you selected your partner and both of you are saving up some money for a big wedding, for example, that would be an achieved status. Being married would be an achieved status. Lastly, with regards to class, social class, economic class, that also can be ascribed or achieved, again, depending on context. I would argue that most folks, when you're younger, your parents or your guardians, that's their social class is your social class. So in that situation, it's an ascribed status. Eventually, some of you are going to change social classes through your merits, meaning going to school, applying, and gaining a particular career, and possibly make more money than your folks, changing your particular social class in which you've achieved that change. So it is possible for social class to be ascribed and then become achieved or possibly stay the same. Just depends on the individual. Last but not least, with regards to statuses, those terms connect to intersectionality, or as Patricia Hill Collins refers to it, the matrix of domination, the matrix of oppression. Intersectionality simply means that multiple statuses affect you at the same time. So when you experience something, that experience is not in a vacuum of just one status. So for example, it's not just gendered, it's not just about your age or your class or your race. It's actually all your statuses coming together and generating a very unique experience for you. The example that I like to utilize for intersectionality is the example of my family's gathering. The way we usually get together in my family when we are in a really large group is a reflection of my ethnicity, i.e. of being Mexican, or at least of the way we practice our particular culture. It's a reflection of gender, it's a reflection of age, it's also a reflection of class, and I will explain how all of those statuses for me impact my experience at social gatherings. So the social gatherings, or the family gatherings, better yet, the women are expected to cook, and then the men are hanging out, playing games, watching the game, whatever it is that they're doing. Then they sit down first to eat. The women bring out the food and serve the men. Once the men are done, the women and the kids get to sit down and eat. And that is my experience at family gatherings. And so I argue that that experience is an experience of intersectionality. It's definitely the expectation with regards to being of Mexican heritage. Obviously, the expectation connected to being female. Age is also a factor. Now that I am considered an adult, I'm supposed to help out, as opposed to if I was a child, and I wouldn't necessarily be expected to help out as much. And it's also an issue of class, because if we were rich enough, we would probably have people who can cook for us, and we'd probably be able to afford a table in which we can all sit at the same time. So that is intersectionality, or the matrix of domination, the matrix of oppression. And with that said, I hope that this video clarified those 5 concepts. I will be posting another video for Learning Unit 2, in which I will be highlighting some specific historical events that are connected to chapters 3 and 4. Have an amazing day, and I hope to see you soon.